Good evening. Pardon? You can't hear? Can you hear me now? Okay. This is what happens when you're 6 feet. Everywhere you go, you got to lift everything. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to pray one more time just to ask God to just take my nerves and take them down. Dear Lord, how grateful am I to be your daughter. Every lady here that's sitting here tonight is your daughter. Father, I pray that you would use the words of my mouth to bring honor and glory to you and you alone. May the ladies leave here tonight knowing how much you love them, how much you care. So I ask for your Spirit to come and pour down on each person. Thank you so much, Jesus. Amen. So a couple of things that I'm going to let you know before the talk is some things that have impacted me in my life so that when we're going through this weekend, you will understand a little bit more when I talk about certain things. So just a couple of things that have impacted me in my life. One was when I was graduating from high school and I had a very bad car accident. So this is the scar on my face. Anyway, my jaw was broken. I had a lot of different things happen. But at that time, it took my whole entire life and put it on a different path. I was going into university at Walla Walla when school ended, and I was planning to do chiropractor. And, you know, when I had this accident, I had a head injury, and I couldn't actually read without throwing up. I was sick. When I tried to read, the words were jumping around, and it was very difficult. So that impacted my life because I couldn't go to school anymore. What did God have in mind? And actually, to tell you the truth, at that point of my life, I wasn't really following God. I was in a Christian school. I'd been raised Christian, but He wasn't my focus. And through that little accident, God changed my focus, and He said, I have something different for you to do. We have plans, but God has plans. So that impacted me. The other thing that impacted me was being a young girl and having this big gash on my face. I didn't want to come out at first, and there was this old cowboy. He was 80 years old, and I was friends with him. I used to ride horses with him all the time. And he had heard that I was having trouble not wanting to be around anyone at that moment. And so he came to the door. I wouldn't answer the door. My parents were gone. He started knocking. And the window was open in the kitchen, and he kept knocking, and I'm not answering. I just didn't feel like seeing anyone. And he said, I know you're in there. He said, I know you're in there, and you have a decision to make. He said, you can decide to feel sorry for yourself, or you can decide to go forward and be positive about whatever comes. And that's all he said, and he left. And I cried after he left, and I made a decision in that very moment that it didn't matter what was going to come, what the outcomes of my accident would be and how my life would shape up. It was going to be up to God, and I was going to trust Him, and I was going to go forward and be positive. So that impacted me. Something else that impacted me was a story at school. I don't remember how old I was, but somebody, a teacher, read a story, and in that story, there was a bag. I'll never forget. She said there was a bag on the road, and someone was driving by, and they saw a brown paper bag, and it was moving. And the person said, stop, we got to look. There's something in that bag. It's moving. And make it short, the story, the person got off, looked in the bag, and it was a baby. That story impacted me deeply when I was young. And I was always looking in bags on the side of roads when I would walk. I thought, how could someone leave a baby in a bag? And that just, it really impacted me. Another thing that impacted me was my mother. She had been very badly abused as a child. She had an alcoholic father. And she was physically and sexually abused. And I grew up knowing that my mother was brave. She's here today. She was brave because she did what she had to do, and she ended up putting her father in jail. But then she also ended up forgiving him when he came out, and when God took over her heart, she forgave him. So this was another thing that impacted me greatly in my life. So now that you know these things, as I tell stories, I'm hoping that you will understand some of what God had already prepped me for. So for this is the 4th year, I've been doing flower farming. Now, before that, I was taking care of children. We had a home. It was a specialized resource home for children that were either very difficult or they could not place. So my husband and I had 5 biological children. And what they started to do is we worked for a native band, and they started placing children in our home. They ended up placing 10 children besides our own in the home. So there was always a ton going on, lots to do. You never had a moment to just think, oh, I'm bored. But it was very, very rewarding, extremely rewarding, because we saw miracles happen, and we saw God intervene in the lives of these children and in our own children's lives in ways that I would never have imagined. I'm going to share some of these stories with you this weekend. Now, God has, as you can see, I had a path that I wanted, but he said, no, I need you to do something else. And I was not even a kid person, just so you know. I wasn't one of those people that took care of kids. When I had my baby, that was the first time I'd held a baby. So it wasn't something that I was choosing, but God had a plan. Now, flower farming. So we did that. And now for the last 4 years, I've been flower farming, and I'm going to explain to you why. But I want to read you a Bible verse. And I would like you to keep this Bible verse in your mind as I tell you these stories. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed. I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10. I am your God. Keep that in mind. He's saying that to every one of you here today. I am your God. Do not fear. Now, the title, Are You Being Pinched? I borrowed a plant here. I usually like to bring a snapdragon, but this is what was on the table. So it looked like a lot of you like to garden. I love flowers. And I forgot to tell you that too. That's another thing that impacted me. My grandmother loved flowers. And so I, from a young age, would look at her flower garden and be like, oh, I want to do that. I want to have flowers everywhere. So it's been a lot of fun the last 4 years. But anyway, when you pinch something, this isn't exactly, I can't show you exactly on this, but you'll sometimes just have a small green stem with a few leaves, and you literally just pinch it and rip a piece off. There is you do a certain thing, you wait till it's three leaves up, and then you do it. But when you pinch that, does anyone know why you pinch it? Why? So it gives the plant a signal. It says, hey, we got to set more branches out. We got to go outwards. And what ends up happening is you produce a lot more flowers if you pinch. But I'm telling you, the first time I ever had to pinch a plant, I could have cried. I've been growing these little babies since January in my little greenhouse. And I was growing, and I'm like, how could I pinch those things? But it says you got to pinch them if you want more flowers. So I did it. And the outcome was incredible. Plants that would maybe have a couple of flowers would just have so many blooms on them. And they were so much more beautiful, so much more effective, and you could get so many more cuts off of them. So pinching. When you think of what I just did, it looks painful, doesn't it? It got me thinking about the Christian life. Do you sometimes feel like you're being pinched in your life? Is it hurt? Is there things going on that are really hard and you don't understand? Well, I'm hoping today we can bring a little light on why the pinching happens and how come it's an important part of our spiritual lives. Now, there's stories in the Bible, and there's so many stories about people being pinched or having trials. I mean, you can basically talk about any Bible character and they've gone through huge trials. But one that came to my mind was Joseph. Joseph. Basically, as soon as he was born, he was an orphan. Yes, he had his father, but his mother was gone. What would that be like to grow up without a mother? Not only that, but to grow up in a house where the other lady that's there hated your mother. So, in turn, would probably not like you. His brothers, the ones that should be closest to him, the ones that should love him, they hated him. They not only hated him, but they sold him as a slave. Can you imagine the people that are supposed to have your back selling you as a slave? Then he was taken away from every single thing he knew. That's a huge trial. Not only was he taken away, but then he did his very best, and in return he was thrown in jail and falsely accused. Talk about pinching, talk about trials. And then he had to wait for God. In all of this, he had to keep his trust and his faith in God. In Genesis 50:20 it says, and this is him talking, "You intended to do me harm, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Would you agree with me that all that he went through in the end turned out to save many lives? Afflictions, crosses, temptations, adversity, and our very trials are God's workmen to refine us, to sanctify us, and to fit us for heavenly garner. There was another guy that came to my mind, and that was Daniel. I can't imagine what it would have been like to have you're in the middle of a war and everyone you love, basically, except for a few friends, is destroyed. Your family's killed. You're taken from your place that you live and you go to a foreign place. That's a pinching. That is a serious, serious trial. But when you think of Daniel, I mean, that guy did so much good. We actually have prophecies for today from him that God was able to use him in his life. He made something beautiful out of something horrible. He was made a eunuch. I mean, for a young man, that must have been devastating. Now, I'm sure that many of you are going through trials in your life. Serious trials. And probably ones that some of you can't even talk about. If you live in this world, you have stuff to deal with. I'm going to share with you my story, and I'm going to share what God has done in the last little bit. Now, I'm sure it's nothing like some of yours. Some of your stories are horrendous, and I'm sure that if you could tell them, we would learn many things. But today, my story is about the children that we took care of. Now, we had all these children in our home, and like I was saying, we were so busy, like crazy busy. But these kids, what was so beautiful is to watch them. They'd come into our home not believing, not knowing who Jesus was at all. And they accepted Jesus immediately. It was like so, I can't describe it. It's like as soon as you told them that there was this Jesus, this God that loved them, they believed it. They just believed it. And when we would have worship with them morning and night, you'd watch their little faces. When we were telling them the Bible stories, they were just sucking it all in. They believed. They would pray. They were praying for their parents. They were praying for people in their families. They were sincere, and we could see God doing a work. There was no doubt we could see miracles happening. So we had decided to move. We had a house, a large house with all these bedrooms, and for some reason God had placed it on my husband's and I's heart that we needed to move and to downsize a little bit. So we moved with all of these kids, and we actually ended up renting my parents' house, and they were somewhere else for that time, and we went in there. And it was hard, because you got to understand, all these kids we had, 8 of them were boys, and they all had serious troubles. Like, they had diagnoses that were long lists of them. We saw psychiatrists all the time. So these guys, they had trouble. But so a move like this was difficult. It was very difficult for them. And at the time, I remember thinking, why are we doing this? What is going on? This is so crazy to be doing this right now. Anyway, we moved. We're waiting to buy another house. We're staying up at my parents' house. And one of the girls we take care of who's in a wheelchair, she had a social worker that I had been working with for a few years. And she came to the place, this social worker, where she started confiding in me. And she told me, my husband has cancer and he's not going to survive. Could you pray for him? So we got on the prayer chain and said, listen, we got to pray for this guy. Everyone's praying for him. She can see changes happening in him, and she said, okay, my husband's not a Christian, but we really want to come over and talk to you because we see God is doing something. So remember, we're staying up at my parents' house. There's all these kids. They're all kind of in upheaval a little bit, and they've asked to come over. So they came over. And it was one of those times where you just have to pinch yourself because it's so beautiful. You know the Spirit of God is there. You see it. You feel it. They were pouring out their hearts, and we were able to share the love of Jesus with them. We were able to say the reason that you're getting better is because of God. It's because of prayer. And they were just weeping. They were sitting there and weeping, and we were having this wonderful time together. And I started realizing that some of these boys were coming in and out, and they were sitting very close to me, and some of them were like squished up against me, which wasn't, that happened a lot. But what I noticed is they kept coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And we were so wrapped up in working with these people that I didn't really pay attention, because I was used to paying attention, because with that many boys, if you didn't pay attention, your house would be burned down fast, or something crazy would happen. So anyway, we go to say goodbye to these people. We give them a hug. We're so excited. And we turn after they leave, and we say, okay, where's we mention these two boys. Where are these boys? I don't see them anywhere. Nobody says anything. Silence. And I'm thinking, okay, well, we're out in the country, we're on this big acreage. Those guys, they love to climb trees. They like to ride their bikes. They like to jump on motorbikes. They're going to be somewhere. But this is evening already. So we all started calling, thinking they're somewhere close, looking, nothing. Then I started to get a little worried because it's an hour has gone past and we're not finding these guys. And they're always hungry. So usually by this time they'd show up for food. But nothing. So we phoned my other daughter and her husband. We said, can you guys help us look? Because they lived close. We all started looking. And then my son-in-law comes back in his car, and he has a pedal from a bike. And he said, I found this on the road going to town. And this is from one of the boys' bikes. I was like, what? On the road to town? Like, we live way out of town. So then I was really worried. So we started looking. Everyone drove into town, and we're just frantic by now. We can't find them. You know how that feels? Like you are sick. I was literally crying. I'm like, where are these two boys? Nobody seems to know anything. So then I get a phone call. We go back to the house, and we're praying, because it's been hours now, and I know that I have to phone the social workers, and what do I say? I've lost these boys? Like, I don't even know what to say. But the phone rings, and it's the social worker, and she said, I'm at the police station with these two boys. And I said, what? Why are you at the police station? What do you mean you're at the police station? She said, well, I can't really explain to you right now, but she said, I'll talk to you in the morning, and she was just cold as ice. And I was sick. What in the world? This is so weird. Did they get hurt? I'm like, she won't give me any information. So we go to sleep that night. I'm telling you, we were sick about the whole thing. What happened to them? Are they okay? Where are they staying tonight? What's going on? Nothing, not a word. Well, the next day the kids get on the bus. The other kids all get on the bus. We were sending them all to a private school, so they all got on the same bus. They went to school, except for one little boy. He was too little to go to school. And I had no idea that that would be the last time that I would see some of them. So we received a phone call later on. The social workers had gone to the school, and what had happened is over the Christmas break before, one of these boys had gone home, and he hadn't been home in years, and he had a very, very abusive dad. He had gone through horrible things as a kid. But it doesn't matter how badly you've been abused. Kids have this desire to be with their parents, and I understand it. And what we didn't know is during that Christmas break, they had made a plan, the dad and the boy, to go to the police when he could get away, escape, and make accusations against us. So they had said that my husband had held a knife to the boy's throat, which, if you knew my husband, he is the most gentle man you could ever meet, and he's a good man, and this was a full lie. They also said that we were working them, and we were, in the way that they all had, the social workers knew we had a chore chart on the wall. We were trying to teach them responsibility. They all had their chores. So anyway, it was kind of like the perfect storm, because just the week before, it had come out in the news about Kamloops Residential School. I don't know if you guys remember hearing about that, but they found all these bodies of Native children, which is so sad. So that was a Christian. They're saying the Christians, had this school, residential school, killed all these kids, and here we're Christian at home. We've been very open. We were even sending them all to Christian school. So it was the perfect storm. So basically, those kids, when they went to get off the bus, the social workers were waiting there, and they just took them all to different homes. And the little guy that was at home with us, they said, you need to bring him to the office. You can imagine this little guy was just clinging to our neck, just screaming and crying. And we're not trying to tell him anything, but he's wondering where everyone is, what's happening, and why he has to be dropped off. It was devastating. And I'd worked with parents who had been addicts. The cool part of our job was that we worked with this Native band, and they allowed us to work with the parents. And we got to know these parents and love them, and we saw the crazy that would happen in these guys' lives, but we'd pray for them. And here all of a sudden, all the tables are turned. And we're the ones now with them, like they're accusing us of something that never happened. So it got intense, and it got so intense because actually we had a social worker write us a letter later and say none of this would have happened if you were not Christians. But they decided to go after us because of this whole residential school thing and make a public thing of it. We had death threats. We had all kinds of things from the Native community that we had been part of, and we loved those people, and they were our friends, and all of a sudden everyone turned. And we were just, it was more than you could almost bear, honestly. And I remember at one point the police said, okay, well, your husband and you have to come down to the police station. We said, yes, we want to, whatever you want to ask us, we're happy to come. And they took us separately, and they interrogated us, and it was interesting because I'd never been in that position before, but I was so fine with it because we could just answer honestly. Well, then they said, we need you to take a polygraph test to my husband. He needs to take a polygraph test. So he said, sure, I would be happy to do this. So he took a polygraph test, and I'm telling you, he said, if you ever met my husband, he is such a calm, solid guy that nothing ruffles his feathers. And I mean nothing ruffles his feathers. He's just calm. And when I picked him up and he came out of that polygraph test, he was just shaken. He said they just went after him, the whole Christian thing. They were hucking things at him. They were screaming, you're a Christian. And they were just saying all this stuff. And he said, they've been trained to try to break you down. And he said, when I came out of there, he said, I feel sick. But the thing that happened is he passed the polygraph test, and the guy that did the testing on him grabbed him in a hug after and said, I have to say, I've never met a man like you. So even through that horror, God was able to use it for good, even though that man went after him for being a Christian. So anyway, this whole thing goes through, and it took almost a year to clear our name. We were completely cleared. But all the children went back to their homes, and some of them went back to abusive homes. And I had to ask God, why? I don't understand. You saw them, God. You saw their little hearts. You saw them. They believed in you. Why would you allow this to happen? So one night, we had bought this property, and we were living in a trailer because we were renovating it. And I couldn't sleep. I was just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. These children, like, what, God, why? And I got up, and I'll never forget it. It was summer, it was August, it was a full moon. And I was walking, I'd taken my headlamp, but I didn't even need the headlamp because it was so bright. And I said, God, I know you can tell me something to give me courage right now, to help me to understand, because I don't understand. And I know you've sent angels to talk with people. You've done miracles. I've seen it. You can talk to me. You can let me know. And I'm walking outside in our property, and nothing, not a single thing. But I know God's real, and I know He cares because I've seen it. And as I'm walking around, I see nothing, and I'm coming back, and we had two big sea cans, and in the middle of where those sea cans were, we had a bunch of big flower planters. Now, that summer, it was plus 42. It was so hot. And during that, there was a time period there, it was so hot. And I had a couple little flower baskets by our trailer that I was having a hard time keeping alive. And as I'm walking past these two sea cans, something caught my eye. I saw color. And I'm like, what's that? So I turned my headlight on so I can make sure I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And one of our big pots between the sea can that I have not looked at since we moved was full, I'm not joking, of beautiful flowers. Now I know flowers can self-seed, but they cannot self-water. It was as good as an angel standing there, because what God said to me in that moment is, the seed has been planted. I will take care of the watering. You have to trust me, even when you don't understand. Do you trust God even when you don't understand? You think of that Bible verse we read. You intended to do me harm, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many souls. Do you not believe that God wants to save as many as He can? Does He love those children more than I did? Oh, yes, He did. And He does. I want to read you something. The fact that we are called upon to endure trial proves that the Lord sees something in us very precious, which He desires to develop. If He saw in us nothing whereby we might glorify His name, He would not spend time in refining us. We do not take special care or pain in pruning brambles. No. Christ does not cast worthless stones into His furnace. It is valuable ore that He tests. Do you believe this? You know, that one little thing that God showed me was enough for my heart. It was enough for me to hold such courage. I can't wait till heaven, because I know I'm going to see things that He's done that are miraculous. Those children, He loves them even where they are. He's caring for them even where they are. But when we really believe that God loves us, now just think about this, and means to do us good, we shall cease to worry about the future. You have nothing to worry about. It doesn't matter what trial you're in, what thing you're going through, you can trust your God. Now, 1 year ago, this is the last story. 1 year ago, those same social workers that had been part of the accusations with believing it and pushing it on phoned and said, hey, Karla, can you do a supervised visit with a family? So God had turned everything around. And I said, yes, I can come do some supervised visits for you. So when you do a supervised visit, you come with your paper and pen, and you sit and you watch the parents and the kids interact. And I'm telling you, I do this with a whole different thought now. I used to come to some of those visits before and drop kids off, and I sometimes had a little judgment in my heart. But now it's different. I see those parents and I love them because I know what they're going through. I know what they're going through. And I'm called to this visit. And this mom, I had never met her. She has 6 children. And so what they'd done is they'd split the visits up, and they had just the girls with one visit and just the boys at another visit. So she's doing it in the park. And in our little park in the town, in Little Enderby there's painting in the park the same day that she has the supervised visit. So what she'd done is she'd set up a little tent, and she'd brought everything for a tea party for her girls, and it was precious. I mean, she had every detail down, little tiny sandwiches cut, little drinks, little just everything, little napkins, lights. I mean, she did so much work. My heart I just couldn't believe it when I saw it. I thought, this mom is trying so hard to show these girls how much she loves them. But what happened is, because there's painting in the park, of course, every parent that comes with their kids comes over to that tent, thinking this is painting in the park. And I'm there, and I'm having to say, no, we're just having some family time here. And anyway, most of the people were nice. They just walked off. And then this one lady came with 2 little girls. And she said, oh, I thought this was painting in the park. And one of the little girls of this mom who was having the tea party saw that she knew this little girl. And she said, oh, it's you. Why don't you join our tea party? And I was like, oh, this is kind of a bad situation. I don't know how we're going to get out of this one. And the mom quickly looks at her little girl and says, honey, if this means a lot to you, your little friend, she can stay for the tea party. So she invited the mom and these 2 girls into this tea party. So I'm watching this whole thing. And pretty soon, this mom turns to me, because the girls are drinking the tea and having their little sandwiches, and she said to me, I have something that happened to me that has changed my life. And I said, oh, what's changed your life? She said, I can't tell people. She said, if I tell people, they get very weirded out and they don't believe it. I said, oh, well, try me. I'd love to hear what's happened in your life. So she says to me, okay, she said, I live off-grid with my kids and my husband. My husband's a naturopath. And she said, I was taking water to some of our animals. Anyway, she got cut. And she said, I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker from this cut. It got infected, and I was just so sick. She said, I knew it was getting to the place where I couldn't take care of my girls anymore. So she said, my mom lives on the island, and I asked if I could go there. And she could take care of the girls, and she could take care of me. So she said, we went. She said, I was getting so sick, but her husband and her were kind of against regular medicine, so they didn't really like to go to the hospital. So she said, I could tell in myself I wasn't getting out of bed anymore. She said, I knew I was dying. She said, I had a very serious blood infection. She said, I knew I was dying. She said, I didn't know what to do. She said, I've been raised an atheist. My whole life I was told there was no God. She said, and as I'm laying there, in and out of consciousness, she said, I know you're not going to believe this. I don't know if I should tell you. I said, no, you tell me. It's okay. She said, Jesus came to see me. She said, I was told he wasn't real. She said, and he said to me, you've been told a lie, and I love you. She said, I got better after that. She said, do you think I'm crazy? She said, I know what I saw. I said, no, you're not crazy. I said, I believe you 100%. You're not crazy. I said, but I'm looking at her face, and she's just in torment. And I'm like, but what's wrong? I said, something's wrong. It's all over your face. And by this time, the other mom is listening to every word. She said, my husband doesn't believe. My parents are atheists. They said, I cannot speak this craziness to their grandkids. She says, no one around me believes it, that I saw Jesus. She said, but now I don't know what to do with this because I saw him. I believe he's real. And I said, listen here. I said, even if no one believes you, you got to read your Bible. Trust, he does love you. If he came to see you, he's got plans for your life. And we just talked, and I hugged her, and she just poured out her heart. And then this other lady's like, I believe in God too. And her little girl's like, Mom, you do? And she's like, yes. And so we're having this little amazing kind of study in the park. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, is God not good? He's so good. She went through such a trial, but through that trial, she saw Jesus. Through your trial, you may not be the one that sees him literally, but you will see Jesus if you allow him to be seen through the trial. He's there with you in the trial.
I just wanted to tell you that mother with her 2 girls are coming to Sabbath school every week.
Wow.
They're coming.
What? You didn't tell me that. Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, she just showed up. I said, what made you decide to come? She said, I just felt like I needed to come.
Wow.
Praise God.
God is so good. I don't know what trial you're going through in your life right now. I don't know what God is doing, but I want you to know, hold on to hope. Jesus is there with you in the trial. He's making something good for the salvation of many souls. It's not just about us. There's so many people out there that are watching, and what you're going through can be to help to save many souls. If you choose to allow God to do the work he needs to do, and you allow it to not make you bitter. Like that cowboy said to me, I had a choice to make. You know, when trials come to us, we have a choice to make. But remember, our God is so good. He loves you. He loves you. I'm going to read one more thing, and then we'll have a song, and then I'll pray. I read it before, but I want to read it again so you can remember it. But when we really believe that God loves us and means to do us good, we shall cease to worry about the future. Your future is in his hands. Leave it with him. We're going to play a song and then I'll pray.